But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why, 35 years ago, fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal.
Those were the famous words spoken by President JFK on September 12, 1962. This was in regard to the space race, a race between the United States and the Soviet Union to achieve first in space travel and exploration. And as history has it, the US landed the first man on the moon on July 20, 1969. But hold on a second, there was just a little under 7 years between those two dates. How is it that the US went from being just barely able to get a man out of the atmosphere for a mere 15 minutes to taking a whole crew to the moon and back in just 7 years? Especially when something like the Statue of Liberty, which is shorter than the Saturn V and certainly not capable of space travel, took a whole 9 years to construct. The answer to this is public interest. So let's take a look at what the US accomplished during the space race, what a company like NASA could do with an increased budget today, and why we should be concerned about it anyways. Now, 4 years before JFK's speech, the US launched its first satellite into orbit around the Earth, Explorer 1. Explorer 1 was just under 7 feet long, so you could imagine it being just a bit bigger than a tall person. However, up until the speech, all the US had completed in terms of manned spaceflight was a 15-minute long flight that did not even orbit the Earth. This to me almost seems like a step backward. In 4 years, we went from putting a 6-foot 9-inch satellite into orbit to getting one man outside the atmosphere for only 15 minutes. This is the point where the public became interested in winning the space race due to JFK's speech. To this day, NASA received its all-time high in funding in 1966 by receiving $5.4 billion, or 4.4% of that year's federal budget, which would be equivalent to $194 billion of 2019's federal budget. 3 years after the spike in public interest, the US had landed the first man on the moon. So what can NASA do with an increased budget today? One of the most common comparisons you will find in this case is what could NASA do with the US military's budget? In 2019, the US military received $686 billion, or 15.5% of the federal budget. A science journal called INSH is known for giving answers to hypothetical science questions such as this one. Maria Horninko, an INSH writer, says, "With that kind of budget, the colonization of Mars would be the next Apollo mission, and we'd move up the launch date of the Europa Clipper, a mission to Jupiter's smallest moon in search of signs of alien life in the ocean of liquid water beneath its icy shell." Think about it, in just 6 years from now, we could be setting foot on Mars or discovering life somewhere other than Earth. Now that might sound interesting, but why does any of this really matter? So here's a little story. Antibiotics, penicillin specifically, were discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1928 when his petri dishes containing colonies of Staphylococcus were contaminated with a strain of mold that produced penicillin as a way to protect itself. Fleming noticed that there were rings around the spots of mold where the bacteria did not seem to grow, and thus antibiotics had been discovered. So what is the takeaway of this story? One of our most commonly used types of drugs that fix so many different types of issues were discovered because they were being naturally produced by another organism. And this is the case with so many of the medications we use today. CBD is a more recent example of a drug that is being studied for its medical uses, and it is derived from a plant. So who's to say that this won't be the case if there are other forms of life out there? We could quite possibly stumble across an organism that might give us the cure to cancer, or remedies for any of the other illnesses that modern medicine struggles with today. However, maybe a more simplified reason is just that we're curious. NASA gives us this as the reason for why they explore. Humanity's interest in the heavens has been universal and enduring. Humans are driven to explore the unknown, discover new worlds, push the boundary of our scientific and technical limits, and then push them further. The intangible desire to explore and challenge the boundaries of what we know and where we have been has provided benefits for our society for centuries. Curiosity and exploration are vital to the human spirit, and accepting the challenge of going deeper into space will invite the citizens of the world today and the generations of tomorrow to join NASA on this exciting journey. Curiosity and humanity's interest are a great driving force. Without them, we would never push our boundaries or wonder what else there is to be seen. But how do you take an interest in a topic that seems as broad and complex as space travel? Where do you even start? It's very easy actually, simply because you already are. See, the thing is that when we do colonize the moon or another planet, we're going to need the same jobs we have here on Earth. For example, engineers need to figure out a way to get people to and from other extraterrestrial bodies, and how to build structures in the differing strengths of gravity. Medical personnel will have to figure out how to treat people in space, and what issues can develop as a result of space travel and living in places with different gravities. Professors and teachers will have to figure out how new discoveries can be communicated and taught, since it takes 13 minutes for signals to travel the distance between Earth and Mars, so live communication is not possible. These are the questions we will need answers to, so just ask yourself, what challenges would I face if I were to try and do my job on space or in another planet? Then all you have to do is be curious. Look for answers to your questions, try and solve those hypothetical problems. Because one day, those hypothetical problems aren't just going to be hypothetical anymore. Space travel and space exploration allow us to learn about our place in this massive universe. Colonizing a place somewhere other than our current home is humanity's next big challenge. And the more people that get involved, and the sooner we start to ask questions and take an interest in expanding human knowledge as a whole, the sooner we can get there. And who knows what we'll find, but let me tell you this. The day someone finally sets foot on the moon or on Mars with the intent of starting our first extraterrestrial colony will be the day mankind takes its next giant leap.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.